Chapter 15. The Impenetrable Mystery. Theism is the belief in deity, defined as God or Supreme Being, while atheism is the lack of belief in deity. On the surface, both stances seem as different from each other as black is from white. But beneath all the baggage that we attach to both theism and atheism, these seemingly conflicting paradigms are more alike than you might realize. Both the theist and the atheist appreciate the concept of cause and effect. For every effect, there is a cause. The proof of this lies in every aspect of the universe around us. For instance, ripples on a pond tell us that an object previously disturbed the surface. When we say something created the universe, we are immediately faced with the need to invent another thing to create the first thing, and so on into infinity. This is termed the problem of infinite regression. The myth-making machinery of the brain goes to work to solve this, seeking a logical way to break an infinite chain of causes. We might reason, since we exist, we know that something has existed forever, something which has permanent existence outside of the known realm of cause and effect, transcending what we call space-time, an uncaused cause that is fundamentally other, formless and eternal. This answer satisfies many, especially theists, who use it as an argument for the existence of God. But an important question must be raised. Is this uncaused cause separate from the universe? Or is the uncaused cause the universe itself? Am I seriously suggesting that the universe has always existed? The ancient Greeks could embrace that notion because they observed a night sky that was largely unchanging. We can no longer entertain that view because modern science has informed us that the galaxies are moving away from each other. This suggests a unified origin point, what we term the Big Bang, which happened roughly 13.8 billion years ago, according to present calculations. The Big Bang theory is one of the most misunderstood pieces of science, particularly by theists. They tend to picture an infinite expanse of vacuum into which something popped into existence from nowhere. This is why they insist on a supernatural creator. And I agree, such a premise would indeed require a supernatural creator of some sort. But the premise is entirely wrong. Picture, if you will, the creation of the universe in reverse. Imagine all the energy going backwards in time towards that original explosion. It gets smaller and smaller until, poof, it's gone. Or so it seems. It's certainly gone from the point of view of an imaginary observer floating in space, waiting for something to happen. This is a subtle error in perspective that usually goes unnoticed. You see, not only is the observer imaginary, so is space itself. The Big Bang was not just the expansion of energy, but the expansion of space. The real nature of space and time are nothing like what common sense dictates. If you look at a two-dimensional map of the solar system, you will likely imagine that the space between the planets conforms to ordinary geometric assumptions. You might think that drawing a straight line between Mars and Venus would give you an accurate measurement of the distance between these planets at a given moment. In actuality, space is bent and warped all over the place due to the masses of astronomical bodies. A moon that orbits a planet appears to be moving in a circle, but it is actually falling. The reason it doesn't fall directly downward and collide is due to the unusual curvature of space itself around the planet. We make a similar incorrect assumption when we think of time. We imagine it to be composed of fixed units of measurement, such as the seconds on a clock. But time actually runs at different rates depending on our speed. Strictly speaking, a physicist would say that the distance an object travels in space-time changes with respect to its velocity. Amazing as it sounds, time appears to move faster on board a moving train than it does on a nearby platform. According to the mathematics, Spending 100 years on board a train moving at 300 kilometers per hour would extend your lifetime by 0.000000000039 years. Not very practical, but still amazing for being a form of time travel that is real. Time also runs at different rates depending on the strength of a gravitational field, such as that of a planet. If you could somehow spend a year living in deep space, far from any planet, you would discover upon returning to Earth that the population has aged more than you have in the time you've been away. Since space and time are linked in this way, they must be thought of as two aspects of a single phenomenon, space-time. The bizarre idea of space being non-existent prior to the Big Bang is impossible to visualize. Video games provide a rough analogy. I can take part in a physical arena of objects that gives the appearance of three-dimensional space on my television screen. But where do the spatial dimensions of the game arena exist before I switch on the console and after I turn it off? Nowhere. The objects in the arena don't disappear and leave behind an empty arena. The arena itself vanishes. Similarly, without a universe, there is no space. When we imagine the Big Bang in reverse, we are conceiving of the universe shrinking into what we call a singularity, a point at which the space-time curvature is infinite. That's a phrase that will take some explaining, but the key factor is that the energy of the universe does not vanish. It only appears to vanish if you insist on picturing yourself in space before space existed. I realize this is a somewhat mind-bending scenario, but bear with me. A better way to understand the origin of the universe is to again imagine time flowing in reverse, but don't look upon the Big Bang as an outside observer. Instead, place your point of observation within the energy that makes up the universe, and let it suck you right through the eye of the singularity. Now you're not hanging around in an imaginary blackness, waiting for something to happen. You're in a whole other dimension, immersed in the indescribable light of the unmanifest universe. And if that sounds more poetic than scientific, that's because science cannot transcend space-time. The singularity at the beginning of the universe is all the energy of the universe compressed to infinite density and zero volume. Notice that a singularity refers to infinity. The Big Bang is not something out of nothing, as theists commonly misrepresent it. The creation of the universe was more like the bursting of an infinitely big balloon, or the poking of a hole into an infinite completeness. This is not something that the mind can fully comprehend. If we understand the word universe as a catch-all term for the energy that makes up the universe, we are justified in saying there never was a time when there was no universe. In the moment before the Big Bang, the energy of the universe is still present, only in a formless state. This is the uncaused cause, but it isn't something aloof from the universe, creating the universe as a thing separate from itself. The uncaused cause is the universe. This understanding is further reinforced by looking at the laws of thermodynamics. The law of conservation of energy states that energy cannot be created or destroyed, only converted from one form to another. It has long been established that matter and energy are not separate. Matter is merely a form of energy. Energy is essentially what everything in the universe consists of. For instance, when a predator kills its prey, the physical body of the unfortunate animal is consumed by the attacker and converted into nutrients, which will later be expended as physical activity. When wood is burned, it doesn't vanish, but is converted into heat. Even light is energy. When light strikes a bright surface, it does not disappear, but bounces off and travels elsewhere. When it hits a dark surface, instead of rebounding, it is absorbed. But even then it doesn't cease to exist. It is converted into heat. This is why your body stays cooler if you wear bright clothes on a sunny day. The indestructible nature of energy is an observation of massive metaphysical importance, because we see that energy is imbued with permanence, a quality that removes it from the chains of cause and effect. In other words, if energy is permanent, without end or beginning, then it never had a cause. It simply is. Energy is a term that is used so frequently in science that familiarity breeds contempt. We mistakenly think of energy as something mundane that we have a comprehensive understanding of. In reality, nobody knows what energy is, and our attempts to define it only cause us to double back on ourselves. We ask, what is energy? And we answer, energy is what everything is made of. But if we should ask, what is everything made of? We then answer, everything is made of energy, and we pretend we've actually explained something. The question, what is energy, is one of the great unanswered questions. It may even be unanswerable. After all, explaining something requires contrasting it with something that it is not. And since everything is energy, then there is nothing left with which to make a comparison. The nature of cause and effect is easily misunderstood. When we look at causes of effects, we are always moving backwards in time to things that already existed. At no point in the chain do we ever witness the creation of something out of nothing, only of energy continually changing in form. In positing a separate, uncaused cause, we are misinterpreting the underlying principle behind causality. In a fundamental sense, there is never any creation, never anything truly new. When a cause produces an effect, this is merely the recycling of energy that has always existed and will always exist. That observation is both scientifically sound and utterly mind-blowing. The monotheist should be feeling the hairs stand up on the back of his neck, because the attribute of eternal existence without beginning or end is supposed to belong exclusively to God. He is the great I Am. And yet science has already proved that the same attribute applies to energy. It is impossible to separate the creator from the creation. The creation never had a beginning and will never have an end, therefore it is uncreated. The universe is not a creation at all in the strictest sense of the word. What need is there then for a creator? If I believed in God as a deity, I would have to be a panentheist rather than a monotheist. Panentheism views the universe as an extension of God, not something separate. Not only is panentheism much more in keeping with the scientific evidence, it is much more logical in a very basic sense. If God is the source of everything that exists, then he must have made everything out of his own being. And this is precisely what the law of conservation of energy shows. Once it is understood that the energy of the universe is permanent, uncaused, indestructible, eternal, then the universe itself is inseparable from the uncaused cause, or to the theist, God. However, I question the necessity of representing God as a divine personality. Human beings are a rather late addition to the universe. Our concept of God as human-like is really just a reflection of our own feelings of self-importance. It is much more rational to simply bask in the mystery, without striving to put it in a box suitable to the categories of our limited minds. If I absolutely had to embrace a label centered around the Greek word theos, God, I would call myself a pantheist. Pan meaning all. God is the universe, defined as the totality of everything seen and unseen. Monotheism should give way to pantheism. This is a bitter pill for religionists to swallow, because they are emotionally attached to the invented human personality of their God. So some are only prepared to go as far as panentheism, which is an attempt at keeping the best of both worlds. It is an admission that the universe is not separate from God, but God is still viewed as a human-like overseer with whom creatures can communicate. I cannot disprove that, but there is simply no reason to add it to the existing picture of reality. A religionist cannot explain why an eternal deity should exist any more than a scientist can explain why an eternal universe should exist. Occam's razor encourages us to opt for the simplest explanation that makes the fewest assumptions. What we know, beyond a shadow of a doubt, is that energy exists and energy is eternal. Panentheism provides no additional explanatory power whatsoever. One can believe in it on the grounds of religious revelation if one wishes, but there is no philosophical or scientific necessity for it. Don't get me wrong, there is a colossal mystery behind the visible aspect of energy, but the monotheist and the panentheist poisons this mystery by insisting that his own personal caricature of the divine is the reality. If you want to view God as an idealized human, then you might as well view him as an idealized goldfish, because both are merely creatures that evolved from a common ancestor, and this ancestor was not remotely human-like. One of the monotheist's chief objections to taking God out of the picture is the problem of infinite regression. Did time begin at a certain point in history, as Christianity would assert, or is there a chain of cause and effect that extends backwards infinitely, universe after universe? I favour the latter position because I don't see infinite regression as a problem. If anything, it's more problematic to explain how time could begin if there's no time to begin with. It's as much of a problem to explain an infinite chain of thoughts in the mind of God as it is to explain an infinite chain of events in time. When did God start making decisions? Presumably since forever. Infinite regression is only thought to be a problem because we cannot wrap our limited minds around infinity. But we can actually demonstrate the tangible existence of an infinite regress using mathematics. Consider the number pi, which is the ratio of a circle's circumference to its diameter. It can be approximated as the decimal value 3.14. A better approximation would be 3.1415926535897932384. But even that is far from close to the actual number. It would take all of eternity to write out the numerical value of pi because the number of digits is infinite. The record number of digits unearthed as of September 2011 was 5 trillion. Pi can also be expressed as the fraction 22/7, but even this is inaccurate. Unlike fractions such as 1/3, the true fractional value of pi cannot be written as a ratio of two integers. 22 and 7 are only close approximations. Pi is what's known as a transcendental number. Think of a measuring tape marked out in inches. Pi is an actual number that exists between 3 and 4, but its absolute value cannot be pinned down. You would need to place the tape under a microscope and set the lens to infinite magnification. Impossible, and yet the number is real. Some argue that there is no deep mystery here. The value of pi cannot be stated in full because a perfect circle does not exist in nature. While that is true, it misses the point. The mystery lies in the fact that we can engage ourselves in the task of perfecting the circle for more hours than exist in eternity. The digits of pi just keep coming, and they don't come from nowhere. That should evoke a sense of the transcendent. And the main lesson from pi? Since an infinite regress of ever-changing digits can be shown to exist in mathematics, on what grounds do we insist that an infinite regress cannot exist in the wider context of cosmology? From our understanding of energy, we know that the universe had no origin in the sense of creatio ex nihilo, creation from nothing. As limited beings, we will never grasp the full essence of what lies on the other side of the Big Bang singularity, but we are in a position to appreciate that it is the transcendent essence of the universe itself. Transcendent of space-time, The singularity is therefore formless and eternal, an all-encompassing one, subject to neither birth nor death. Transcending time, all knowledge is in its grasp, omniscience. And transcending space, all the universe is in its power, omnipotence. The careful thinker realizes at this point that even in making these deductions, we are anthropomorphizing, for to say that something knows is to say that it has a mind, and to say that it has a mind is to limit it in the manner of a creature. We realize that we can't wrap our heads around it, but we intuit its existence, whatever it is, by virtue of the simple fact that we are here. The labels singularity and God are mythic references to the same underlying reality that I choose to call the infinite. Underneath all the trappings, the atheist myth and the theist myth are one and the same. The disagreements that arise are not due to a fundamental difference between atheism and theism. It's only the vector of approach that varies. Each side is looking at the same reality from a different angle, and so dresses up its myth in a different fashion. The atheist, with his focus on science, has a natural tendency to view the cause of the manifest universe in mechanistic terms. The theist, with his focus on spirituality, has a natural tendency to view the cause as a human-like mind. Neither mythic outlook suffices, because both seek to conceptualize the infinite and unknown in terms that are relative to the finite and known, and in so doing they impose false limits. The infinite is neither conscious nor unconscious. Being formless and eternal, it is not subject to any of our limited categories. It is the mystery of mysteries. We can't comprehend it any more than a sparrow could understand algebra. The strictly scientific approach has always rendered the infinite as non-conscious, which has caused a failure of modern man to derive meaning from his myth, rendering him sorrowful over his insignificant place in a cold, clockwork universe devoid of meaning. This is one small advantage of the spiritual approach to the infinite. While religionists have often reduced the infinite to an anthropomorphic shell of its true profundity, they have still been able to derive meaning from a sense of personal connection to something greater than their individual selves. This meaning is, unfortunately, poisoned by our tendency to go too far in anthropomorphizing God, such as when he is portrayed as hot-tempered, tyrannical, and genocidal in the Old Testament, traits that are projected onto God simply because they are seen in man. Even the term the infinite is inadequate, because it sounds so cold and mathematical. We don't have an accurate term for this, because language acts as a box, confining our ability to express our thoughts within a limited set of categories. If I refer to the infinite as he, I've limited it as a personal deity. If I refer to the infinite as it, I've turned it into a lifeless object. I could call it Raxla, which sounds mysterious, hinting at secret lore from an ancient forgotten culture. Truth be told, it doesn't mean a thing, and that's the point. If I could understand it in finite terms, then it wouldn't be what I'm referring to. Whatever terminology we employ, it's vital not to lose the awareness that we are foolishly attempting to define that which cannot be imagined. Recognizing the false limits imposed by both theism and atheism, I am able to extract meaning from the understanding that the infinite represents the fundamental reality beyond space-time. All that is here comes from there. The finite components of the universe, of which you are one, are manifestations of their infinite source, because without the infinite there is no finite. Monotheistic religions have viewed the infinite as something aloof from us, something that formed the universe as a creation separate from itself. But science has shown us that the universe is the infinite, exploding into time and space, the one given expression in a realm where individuality is made possible through physical form and temporal duration. I am convinced that the pursuit of a theory of everything is a fool's errand. We will never fully comprehend the universe by examining the components of the universe. Certainly, we can understand the behavior of one component as it relates to the other components. When Einstein paid enough attention to light, he came up with the theory of relativity, and that's just one example out of thousands. But to fully comprehend something, we need to look at where it came from. For instance, our understanding of what it means to be a human being is informed by our knowledge of the evolution of organic matter. But to gain a complete perspective, we need to look back even further, as far as we possibly can. And here's what we find. Everything in the universe, including you, originated as a singularity. Form is an outgrowth of formlessness, and formlessness is something completely baffling to the mind. How do you categorize something that transcends categories? It can't be done. Science gives you a lot of useful data, and then it confronts you with a brick wall. The realistic goal of science is practical knowledge, not conquering infinity. No matter how much you learn, you will always be left with an infinite mystery that science cannot penetrate. The philosopher Socrates said, "The only true wisdom is knowing you know nothing." You can either let that predicament frustrate you, or you can bask in its glow. What does this mean in relation to me as a creature? It means I am the infinite expressed within the finite. I am the singularity flung into the physical and the temporal. I am the transcendent reduced to fit inside a limited body and brain. I am the one manifesting itself as one of many. So, in answer to the question, are you a theist or an atheist? I can only reply, neither. I believe in the infinite. And when asked to define that term, though I am acutely aware that this 21st century ape is only in a position to scratch the surface of infinity, I reply, the impenetrable mystery behind everything that is. Put simply, this is a return to the sense of wonder that we naturally experience as children before dogmatic religion dictates man-made lies as truth, or materialistic science blinds us with nihilism.